Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard and this is Lap of the World, your home for road trips and racetracks. Currently we have the NSX back in the garage here, kind of anticipating some late season maintenance, but while I wait on the last few parts to come in the mail, I thought it was as good a time as any to tackle another project that I had been wanting to get to since probably sometime around 10 p.m. on I-75 South on the way back from Minnesota last month. Where yet another pothole reminded me that there's probably a better option available for forward visibility given today's technology. And so here we are. Now the operation itself to swap from an incandescent bulb to an LED unit should be in theory, as simple as replacing a headlight bulb. But as you might imagine, we'll see if it gets any more complicated than that. But what I really wanted to do is be able to see for myself what difference it made, as well as kind of demonstrate that for you guys in case it was an upgrade that you were considering. So with that in mind, I went out the other night to an empty office park, or mostly empty office park as it turned out, and I did a little experiment.
The goal with this experiment is to test the ability of the headlights to illuminate objects in the road ahead. Small animals, for instance.
Now, I asked my two corgis at home if they would help, and they were excited to do so.
Schnitzel, do you guys want to go play in traffic? Do you want to go play in traffic? Good boy, good girl.
But my wife said no. So instead, I have brought with me a stuffed corgi surrogate here who will assist me in this experiment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and deploy the corgi in the road ahead here, and again, this empty office park, so I'm not worried about losing the stuffed animal, if that's even a concern. But I'm going to deploy it in the road ahead, and then I'm going to turn the car on, turn the headlights on, and kind of creep forward until I can see that the entire stuffed corgi is illuminated. And then I'm going to get out and I'm going to measure the distance. One thing I did do ahead of time was I cleaned the headlight lenses. That can make a legitimate difference if your headlights are dirty enough. But in my case, there was, I guess, mild improvement probably. Given that they're pop-ups, they don't have to. They fortunately don't suffer really from the sort of yellowing and oxidation that you see on a lot of modern headlights that are the kind of exposed plastic covers. I don't know. I don't know if the facelift first-gen NSXs suffer from that much or not. But they could, presumably, if they were parked outside or driven outside enough. But that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go and deploy the corgi, and we will get to our experiment. Okay, well, we've had a slight change of venue because Karen, but I have redeployed the corgi, and he is out there up ahead, and I apologize if the video is a little bit grainy. I do not have the best nighttime shooting equipment, but we'll work with what we got, and this will get the point across. So you may be able to make out the corgi out there in the distance barely, but what I'm going to do, I've kind of put him in where kind of the middle, or like the center line would be on most two-lane roads. And I'm going to creep up until he is fully illuminated by the headlights. I mean, I'm getting kind of maximum reflectivity, and I'm kind of trying to pay attention to both the camera screen and okay, so about right there, I'd say I have full reflectivity on the corgi, if you can tell. All right, so now that we have him in range, let's take a measurement. Okay, so I'm going to start from the kind of adjacent to where I would be sitting with respect to the length of the car. And we're going to then queue up our measuring application here, which in this case is going to be U-Disc, no affiliation. This is something I use when I do play disc golf. So we're going to set our start point here. Great. And now we're going to take a walk. All right, so I'm going to give I'm going to wake my phone back up, and I'm going to give the GPS a second to kind of center itself. All right, so we were right around, we'll call it 100 feet, and you got to say give or take 10 feet basically because of the error, but it was the same kind of margin of error on both ends, so that should be, it's good enough for what we're doing here. But yeah, there's our surrogate corgi. Another thing I want to show you while I'm away from the car here is, so this is what we have looking at from a I don't know what you would call that, oncoming traffic perspective. So I'll kind of go from like NSX seating height up to like Brodozer seating height here. Just kind of give you an idea of what this looks like from an oncoming traffic standpoint, because our goal here is to be able to see better, but not to blind people so much that they crash into us. All right, so having recovered our friend here, let's get back to the house and change out some headlights. Before we get to actually swapping things around, I did want to point out that the headlight bulbs that are in this car right now have been in there for at least 12 years. That's how long I've owned the car, and I've never changed a headlight bulb. They all still work. So there is something to be said for the longevity you can achieve with a conservatively powered incandescent bulb. You should also consider, though, that incandescent bulbs do degrade over time, so they do kind of lose power as they age. So it's possible that I could get some lift just by going back with new incandescent bulbs. But that's not why we're here, is it? No. We're here because we want to see what happens when we pop in a couple of these bad boys. 4 of these bad boys to be exact, and test out some 2020 technology with some LED bulbs. Now these are Boslla B1 bullets, and before we put them in the car, let me show you what you get. Now for a little bit of light unboxing so we can see what we got for our $30. I did pick these up on sale on Amazon for $29.99. So it's about what I would pay for a premium brand of incandescent bulb, but these are of course LEDs. So we first have a product manual, which I'm sure I will dutifully consult here soon, and then we have our 2 bulbs. Now I say bulbs, these are more than just bulbs. It's really kind of a bulb assembly, if you will. So we'll pick one of them out here and I'll show you what we're on about. This is the high beam, and you can tell that because versus a low beam, it actually has more diodes on the little tab up here, on the circuit board up here. Now this is, the way this can be a direct fit, the LED bulbs from what I've researched are a little bit like an HID kit in that they have a driver instead of a ballast, but with LED bulbs, the drivers can be made compact enough to fit in this assembly. So you'll note I have nothing downstream. This plug will in theory just plug into the car harness and draw power from that. What these do have, which has made some people kind of nervous, and I can understand that, is they have a cooling fan back here. So there is a moving part. There's a moving component with this, and if it's not, you know, the fan doesn't work or stops working, then there's a chance that the bulbs could expire sooner than expected or underperform because the diode in the circuit board is not being cooled enough.
On your pre-facelift NSX, you will begin with the hood up and headlights down. Reach in and remove the dust caps by twisting counterclockwise. Expect some resistance. Next, remove the retaining clips. Push out on the spring tabs and rotate counterclockwise. I recommend gloves as the tabs can be stiff and have sharp edges. Next, undo the wiring connector before finally pulling the bulb out of the socket. Take care not to touch the glass with your fingers in case you need to reuse them.
Moving over to the bench, we now need to prepare our LED bulb to be installed. And first thing we need to do is remove the collar. You just kind of wiggle out here. It's got a couple of O-rings that keep it in place, and you're going to set this aside for just a moment. This is actually how you get the factory retaining clip on, though. So then you can kind of put your bulb through there, being very careful not to touch the diodes on the end, and then you're going to slide the collar back over. You're also going to want to, at this point, put the cord in kind of the down position. So you can look at this at the collar. The smaller of the tabs is the, it kind of indicates the top. So you're going to want to do 2 things. You're going to want to put the cord at the bottom, and then you're going to want to line up the blade of your circuit board here on which the diodes sit. You're going to want to line it up vertically relative to that. So it should look like this when you put it in the car. Now we will smush this collar all the way back on here. Trying to keep the spring clip as centered as possible, so that will make installation a little more easy. And then the last thing we need to do is slightly modify the plug on this bulb. That is because it would seem, anyway, that the Acura car harness is quote-unquote backwards versus the industry standard. So where this one has a plus and minus indicated, that's wrong. It's going to be backwards from that. So you're going to want your car harness hot wire coming into the negative side of this connector. To do that, from my experience, I just took some of these flush cut snippers and I cut off the tab on the side that has the plus and minus printed on it, and that should orient it correctly once you put it in the car. And then this will, because we're using flush cuts, it should also have no problem fitting down in the harness, the car side harness connector. So with that done, we are ready to now reinstall in the car.
With that small modification made, installation is simply the reverse of removal.
And reassembly was indeed just that easy until I got to the dust cap. I was not able to accomplish getting the factory dust cap back over the unmodified Boslla B1 bullet bulb and plug assembly. When I talked to the person who had done this before, they implied, or at least I inferred, that they were able to do that. So this is one of those your mileage may vary. If you're able to or willing to remove your headlight covers, my fasteners are corroded and I don't really want to try and drill them out. You might have a better angle to wire manage as you try and put the factory dust caps back on, but I wasn't able to accomplish that, so I gave up and instead had a friend of mine 3D print me some slightly deeper replacements. So again, I just wanted to put this out there in case anybody else hit the same snag in their installation process if they decide to try this. But just understand that it's 2020, we have the technology and options are out there. Back to the video.
With all of our LED bulbs passing the basic function checks, let's go see how they perform.
Alright, so we have returned to a different part of our fairly dark parking lot. A little bit more light pollution this time, but I don't think enough to be notable. We have already redeployed our Corgi downrange, and although I can already already have some improvement because I can already pretty distinctly make him out down there, but we are going to creep forward until we are sure he is fully illuminated by the what would be the driver's side headlight beams, and that's going to happen. I want to say we're about right there, and he's definitely kind of fully illuminated. All right, well, we have arrived at the Corgi. How far is the Corgi from the car? Well, basically the same distance. I mean, give or take, given the error in the GPS on the phone here, we could not call that a significant or notable difference, but that kind of stands to reason because the you aim your headlights, right, and the oncoming traffic side is kind of aimed to a polite degree to not have it be projected very far down the road and therefore very high to get in someone's eyes. So that's fine. I think subjectively we've definitely seen an improvement though. So again, here for comparison, this is your oncoming traffic view. And that does not, it's not glaring in the camera a little bit. I guess it is lower down as we get kind of down into the beam. But higher up, like where you'd be sitting in a, oncoming vehicle height-wise, probably about, I say a little bit over waist height, so even a low car at that. Doesn't seem offensive. I'm standing here, I'm not getting any sort of dazzle. Just trying to look at it, I can do so fairly comfortably. So what are our takeaways from our follow-up test? Well, although we didn't empirically improve the distance at which we achieved full illumination on our target, our object on the road we needed to avoid, I think that's more a function of the aiming of the headlights to be polite to oncoming traffic than it is the actual intensity of the headlights, which subjectively I feel was a massive improvement. The distance at which I could kind of make out my stuffed Corgi actually exceeded the distance I had available in which to test. So again, subjectively, there was a massive improvement. That's not, though, surprising because I did look up just a moment ago kind of a brand name incandescent replacement bulb for this car is rated at around 1100 lumens, whereas these guys are rated more around 3600 lumens per bulb. So 3.5 times the light I'm not sure, but a lot more, definitely. I don't have a light meter to quantify that, but again, the eyeball gauge suggested it was infinitely easier to see a lot of, you know, pretty much anything, road surface, the edge of the road, anything like that. Having said that, as much brighter as they are, I passed a number of cars going to and from my testing location. Nobody flashed me or anything like that. So I think, again, aiming kind of trumps the upgraded intensity in this case. It's probably a good thing no one flashed me, because the brights on this sucker are basically death rays at this point. RIP your retinas. But, so yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the outcome here. Again, a little bit more fiddly than I anticipated, but not so much that it was prohibitive. One thing I did want to point out, though, kind of a technical detail I did want to cover, is that not all LED bulbs like this are created equal. The design is pretty important to their actual performance, because really what you're trying to do here, because you're taking it's a retrofit, right? So you're putting a bulb that wasn't designed to go in this housing necessarily in a housing that was designed for an incandescent bulb. Now, if you look at the design of an incandescent bulb, which I'll put up on the screen right now, you'll see that the portion from which all of the light generates is kind of, it's a little tiny cylinder of wire coil that gets heated up, and that's where all the light comes from. The goal then with these is to replicate that, and I think they've done so, because if you look at the shape of the LED, it's in a strip right there. And then these in particular, I don't have one in my hand because they're in the car obviously, but they're thin enough that that kind of LEDs facing one direction, LEDs facing the other direction, with not much in between, does a really good job of creating kind of the impression of having a heated coil generating light. So by doing their kind of best impression of a heated coil, these bulbs actually do achieve something like the light pattern that you would see from the stock replacement incandescents, which means you are not obliterating people oncoming traffic with your low beams. And you also have the kind of expected depth and breadth of pattern that you would have gotten with a even a super intense incandescent for that matter, which is what the housings were designed for. So bear that in mind when you're doing your research as far as what to put in your own car. With the NSX, these things seem like a good bet. Now, obviously, I've only had them in the car now for like a couple hours. So I will report back as I run into any issues, if I run into any issues. But for now, great success. I expect to be able to see far better on my next outing, especially that we're getting in here towards into October, sometime during which the time will change for daylight savings in the United States anyway, most of the United States. And thusly, if I go to any tracks later in the season, which I already have one planned for November, I'll be doing more of my driving in the dark. So I'm hoping this will be a boon towards the end of my season. But with that said, though, and until that next adventure, which I will keep you posted on, I just want to make sure I get everything taken care of with the car before I get everyone else excited about where I'm going next. But so that's what you're going to see next. Will be a little bit of steering rack front end maintenance on this car, hopefully, assuming the parts arrive. But until then, and as always, I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video, if not at the track.